All right, I'm here to talk about a topic that has been gaining momentum, which is contract manufacturing, and is gaining momentum for a lot of different reasons that we'll get into with respect to its interest. And those are lots of marketplace trends, the threats, obligations, and opportunities that are produced by these trends, and the role of contract manufacturing in the opportunities and in the overall product life cycle. Increasing interest in healthcare, as you've noticed, when you go to shows like CES and you see that there's a 26% increase in the number of people who are focused on healthcare, you know that med device is going from being a small, conservative, lagging area to being mainstream. And as the prior speaker, who was very good, points out, for good reason. As I indicated, 26% increase, 26,000 people this year, whereas in the prior year it was 20,540. We also see that manufacturing is returning to the U.S. There's good reasons for that as well that we'll get into here in the next couple of slides. There's also an appetite for new devices from the investment community as well as major OEMs, and we work with both of them. There's a focus on R&D and innovation. There's a focus on lots of sensors, of course new drug and device therapies, but then also the Internet of Things and connected devices, and there's a common thread there, and that is that the computers and the analytics are so powerful these days. Now the focus is how can we get the appropriate data into those computers, and how can we get the appropriate data out of the computers. So there's a major emphasis on that, and reports from KPMG and like types of organizations, there's a lot of pressure in the marketplace to change traditional practices for medical device manufacturing. And that pressure comes from a variety of areas, but mainly it's the pressure of we need more revenue and we need lower cost. And so we see that it takes more than just average innovation to do that, and it takes more than innovation in just R&D. We need innovation throughout the product life cycle, including in contract manufacturing. So what does this mean? As I mentioned, the P word, additional pressure on OEMs who are commercializing the devices. That means that they're going to have to be lowering their prices wherever possible, and where they're not lowering their prices, they need to increase their velocity so we can get to market more quickly and produce more revenues. We're going to, as I indicated, speed to market, critical for competitive advantage. There's a lot inside of that. Not only does it allow for better market penetration, it allows for a more broad, robust product portfolio. And in this competitive environment, which is more competitive than it's ever been before, due to the advent of computers and what they've done for global competition, can't understate the importance of that. And lastly, agility and the knowledge to meet customer and end user requirements. Because in that competition, if you can't add a lot of value, the immediate place everyone goes is to lowering the price. So you're either going to be priced or you're going to be valued. So back to the pressure forces, investors and leadership demand ROI at every turn and increasing ROI where possible. There's external pricing pressure, as we all see in the medical device industry. Constantly the hospitals or whoever it may be are putting downward pressure on prices. There's internal cost pressures in the major organizations. There's only so much they can do for the overhead in their sales and distribution channels. So at that point, it's how can we cut it out of R&D or contract manufacturing? And then speed to revenue from the investment community. Of course, they want to get those returns as soon as possible because that represents lower risk. At the same time, we have new technologies outputting new therapies. We have new advancements in a lot of different areas, and as I mentioned earlier, the human factors and human interface of our products is becoming more and more advanced, which increases the cost of doing those development as well, by folks like Apple and others who set a new standard for basically for interface development. And then the regulatory community. They are driving more and more regulation, which is increasing the cost. Meanwhile, they're cutting reimbursements and placing new taxes, et cetera, on medical devices. We'll see how it goes with the med device tax here over the next few weeks. Naturally, quality compliance. New and increased European regulations that are inevitably will flow to the U.S. So how does this affect the contract manufacturing domain? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's moving closer to the buying demographic. More and more when you're manufacturing a product, you need to be manufacturing that in the country it's going to be sold. Now there's varying degrees of interpretation about what manufacturing in that country means. Does that mean final assembly, or does that mean just putting a label on it and putting it in the box? There's rapid change in component obsolescence just due to the massive increase in the number of electronic devices that are available. New innovations cause those components to go obsolete more quickly. So there's a certain requirement there that wherever you manufacture, that they have a more advanced capability in design engineering that they didn't used to have. Not just manufacturing engineers, but they need now design engineers so that they can design in new components and keep your product supply coming. And as I mentioned, the consequences increase. You need trusted partners. That's the bottom line. I hear people say, well, we work with, for example, IBM, so we love working with IBM because they're always good. Well, it really depends on who you're working with at IBM. Can you trust them? What will they do when things get tough? Because we know things are always going to get tough. When we look not only inside our organization for partners, but also for clients for that matter, we use an acronym that we call CAROL. What's the cost? And that's different than the price. Cost is the time, the energy, the money, which is the price, and the opportunity cost involved with working with someone. So what is that cost going to be? We look for their accomplishments because that represents risk mitigation. Who trusts them? Who has gone through the process to make sure they can be trusted? The relationship. Is this going to be a long-term relationship? Because we're going to be investing with whoever we get started with. So are we going to have a long period of time to produce a return on that investment? And do we really matter to them? Or are we a small part of their revenue, a small part of their partnerships, and we don't really matter, so we'll get last billing? How about the offers? Do they offer long life cycle approaches? Will they come out with new offers as the marketplace changes, or will we have to diversify and go out to the marketplace and replace certain parts of their offer because they're not going to keep up? And a good life. Living a good life is always important. Again, this is a matter of trust. Are they easy to work with, or do you wake up in the middle of the night worrying that they're going to betray you at some point, which I don't know about you, but I don't call that a good life. So, what's the upside? The upside is a massive opportunity for both small and large companies in the med device space. And how do we know that? We know it because we have 2 decades of experience working with very large and very small medical device companies as a designer and a manufacturer of medical devices. We've worked with 7 of the top 10 med device companies in the world and dozens of small and mid-sized firms. And they're all saying the same thing. We demand more, we need you to get more competitive, we need more platform technologies, we need to cut the time to market, we need to increase our revenues, and we need to reduce our costs. So before we head out to lunch, I'll just invite you, be around this afternoon, happy to have a conversation about how medical device contract manufacturing can make a difference in your business, and thank you for your attention.